is Way Up with Angela Yee. I'm Angela Yee on our Wealth Wednesday. You know we love Wealth Wednesday. And my partner, Stacey Tisdale, is here.
Happy Wealth Wednesday, everybody. And we are so excited to continue bringing it to you for Small Business Month, Black Small Business Month, with two amazing ladies. One of them you met already, Michelle Anthony, and we've been hearing so much from all of you about how you want to learn about government contracts that we asked, and she said yes. Michelle is going to be our guest co-host for the remainder of the month. Thank you so much for doing that.
And this month in particular, that's really important for us because when you say you asked is I asked too, because I want to learn more about government contracts as well and how I can make my way to that $100 million, billion dollar status. So
yes. The Yeeniverse. We're just talking about the Yeeniverse. And what we've been really focusing on is getting everybody out of the small business hustle mentality that so many of us are in and thinking about scaling and creating industries. And that's why we're bringing you these role models. We already introduced you to Michelle. She is the founder and CEO of Anthony & Associates, which does all sorts of things. She started as a court stenographer. Yes. And then started multiple technology companies, energy companies, and has really scaled through government contracts. And I don't like to use the term, but it's like I met her mini-me when I met Ashley Kirkwood. Ashley is absolutely incredible. Your business is number 360 on Inc. 5000 list. So start by telling everybody about your business.
Yeah, so I run a company called Speak Your Way to Cash. We're a sales training organization, and we really have a unique niche to help experts to land corporate contracts. So most of our clients are similar to me. We're making good money in corporate, but did not like being the only one.
Okay.
And that was my story. So I left a $300,000 corporate law job. I was partner track at a large law firm to start my own business. And so now we teach entrepreneurs how to sell to corporations by pitching directly to them. So I'm excited to learn about the government side of things. On the corporate side, we really teach them to go directly to the decision maker and pitch their services. So if you were an accountant at like an Ernst & Young or your own firm, you can then sell those services to organizations. And there's a way to directly pitch to them. So that's what Speak Your Way to Cash does. That's how we started, was helping entrepreneurs land 5- and 6-figure corporate speaking, consulting, and coaching contracts. That's what we do.
Yep, and you have a podcast too, right?
We do. Speak Your Way to Cash.
Yes, indeed. And I also saw you were on Crane Chicago's Business 20 in their 20s list as well, too. So, and I always think it's such a big deal when somebody leaves behind a successful position, as you both have done, to start your own thing. And so I commend you both, for being in that position because that's really betting on yourself. And a lot of times that's a hard thing for people to do.
That's not enough for you, Ashley. I mean, you're an author also. You have a multi-million-dollar business, but you told me you're like, I want to hit the $100 million mark, and you think government contracts can help you do that?
I do. I think, one of the things that I know what I know, and I know what I don't know.
Oh.
And so I feel like I know how we would reach that mark if we keep doing what we're doing, the volume that we would have to do. But I also understand the largest buyer in the world is the federal government. And so if we can actually sell to the largest buyer in the world, as someone who teaches sales, that makes sense to me. And so I'm interested to hear, is that the avenue that we should take? Is that the best avenue for us to take? And then because we train so many speakers, experts, and consultants, we have a ready-made group of true experts that we could team with and work with who are incredibly qualified and already doing this work for private companies, so they can use that as their past performance and proof that they know how to do the work. And I train hundreds of these women personally, and we have thousands of them in our community. And I just think it would be a missed opportunity if I didn't learn more about that. I've always done well by learning what I don't know and implementing and utilizing and leveraging what I do. And so that's why we're here.
And I like that because basically this is a live coaching session.
It is.
So, yes. And
we're
so
just going to watch and take
notes. I told Stacey, I was like, you know what I would love to be able to do just because of the information that Michelle brought to us the last time. There were so many things that I wanted to do. And I said, you know what, for people listening and also, for you to be able to, for Ashley to be able to sit here and do this live coaching session, and that's going to help and benefit a lot of people as well. And then they can delve deeper into whatever it is that they want to do. But I know I have questions, so I'm going to be a fly on the wall.
Before we get into that, Michelle, you were so successful. You have multi-million-dollar businesses. Why is this important to you? You said you want to step back and really carve out this time and give back. Why is that so important to you?
It's important to me because the further you go up this ladder, the fewer people you see that look like you. And when you understand that if you're able to transfer knowledge, not money, knowledge, because if I give you money and you don't understand how to manage it and to use it, you will squander it. But if I give you knowledge and then add money, then I see a path of success. And that's not done often enough for us.
Right.
It wasn't done for me, but I don't have a hang up about it. You know what I'm saying? I look at it like this. When you talk about the federal government, like I think I said in the back room, there's so much money to be made. No person in this room can make it all.
Right.
So why not help others who look like you make it?
Yeah, and when you think about what you didn't have, it makes you feel like I would love to be able to provide that for the next person, and the next person, and the next person.
Yeah,
And
rather
no
than
fun
having
being
an
rich and
issue.
successful alone.
Yeah, but because a lot of people, they're selfish, and that's not the way we should be. We should want to see our sisters and our brothers thrive, not survive, thrive. And that means give a little of yourself.
Right. Someone's getting those contracts. Why can't it be us?
Oh, they're getting them all day long, every day. Very large contracts.
Right.
Michelle, give our audience a sense of what government contracts did for your business and how you know them so well.
Well, what government contracts did for me was, first, there is a major education that's going to be involved. But once you learn government contracting, there's no business on this earth you can't do. That's the beauty that I've learned. That's why you can hear me say I have an energy company. I do technology. I'm doing a technology deal right now with a brand new form of technology that doesn't even require coding or programming. And I don't have a technology background. But because I've mastered government contracting and business at that level, whatever you talk to me about, whatever business you bring to me, once I hear the model and I understand it, I can take it. I can do it. And so that's what it did for me. And look at how many other people, once you understand it, and like Ashley and I, we talked about, I love the law. So, understanding how to use the law to my advantage, because that's what you have to do. You have to be strategic. And so you can't be afraid of that. You can't allow the law to frighten you. You have to learn how to use it and embrace it and use it to your benefit, because laws are not always there to punish. They're laws there to just guide you and keep you along the path to make sure that you don't take the wrong path.
Right.
So follow the path. Don't go against the Don't do that.
Follow that.
Some of the richest people in the world have used the law certainly to their advantage.
Most recently.
Ashley's a lawyer.
Yeah.
Ashley's a lawyer, and you were top of your class at Northwestern University Law School.
Yep.
Why is knowing the law so important in government contracts?
I think knowing the law is important in business, period.
Yeah.
Because I hear so many people saying like, oh, well, I'm a coach. That's not regulated. That's not true.
It is.
Because you don't
Thank
know.
you. Say that again. Coaching is regulated.
is
All you
regulated.
people out there who
There's-
call yourself coaches, it is regulated.
There's something called the Federal Trade Commission. There is a government body that regulates how you do this industry. But the law isn't going to not touch anything, because when you get caught up, what do?
Right.
They bring a case. Well, they don't really care about you going to jail if it's a civil case. What do they get? They get money. So if you think about it, it's a business. People who don't know the law become victims, especially business owners, because one, they can lose their freedom. They could lose their license. But more importantly, they end up paying more than taxes. They end up paying penalties.
Yes.
So if you don't know the law as a business owner, you will be paying penalties. A quick example is like, hey, you all have Way Up with Angela Yee. Well, let's say someone was like, well, I'm going to be Way Up with Ashley. Well, if I go out and do that and I make money doing that, Angela could say, oh, Ashley took my trademark.
Right.
She ain't going to just say, give it back, though. She's going to say, hey, how much did you make using that trademark? And then she could actually get all of the money I made using her mark. That's the law.
I see
right?
Isaac Hayes is suing Donald Trump for using his estate for using his music during his campaign, but they're not just telling him stop using it.
Right.
They're saying you owe me $6 million for when you did use it.
Yep.
Yeah. So like, if you don't know the law, it's not just people say like ignorance is bliss. No, ignorance is expensive. Okay. It's not bliss. It's expensive. It's bliss until you get that knock on the door from the IRS or the FBI. Then it gets expensive, And so it is not just know the law theoretically. It's make sure you are within the law so that you can leverage it. Now, Michelle's like, she leverages the law to make a ton of money. If you don't know it, not only can you not leverage it to make money, it can cost you money.
Yes.
And we cannot afford extra bills. I don't know about y'all. Maybe
Nope.
your audience can afford extra.
Cannot.
I can't afford extra bills just for being ignorant. Like, I have to make sure I know what it is, which is why, even though, we've had success, we've done some things, Michelle will tell you, what was I doing, Michelle? I was asking Michelle as much as I could get out of Michelle, and I was like, okay, tell me about how can my marriage be better? Okay, how can my attitude be better? How can my leadership be better? Because I'm not about to meet nobody that knows as much as this sister right here, who's willing to talk to me and not ask for wisdom.
Well, let's hear some of those
Right.
conversations because that's what this is about.
Yeah.
Because for everybody
Yeah.
listening and for myself,
Yeah.
these are the conversations that we want to be able to eavesdrop on and then
Yes.
participate in as well. Because I feel like this can spark in some people who are some of our listeners. And to be clear, everyone's not going to do this, but the people
Right.
who are sparked and that are going to go out and do things within the law the right way and take the time to learn how to do this, they're the ones that are going to be the ones that will be able to go on and prosper
Yes.
from this lesson. So go ahead, Ashley.
Why did you want Michelle to be your coach, and what do you want to ask her about?
Yes. So let's start from the beginning, okay? Because I've looked into this, but let's assume I haven't looked into it at all, right? What are the first 3 things that you need to have in place, or whatever number you think makes sense, in order to get started selling to the government? There's definitely some pre-work. So is it registering on sam.gov? Where should people start? If they're like, okay, I want to do this, what's the first step?
Well, you can't register on sam.gov until you actually form a corporation.
Yep.
So you got to have a corporation, you have to have an entity, and you have to know what you want to do. Because when you go on to sam.gov, or even when you form that entity, the government is going to want to know what's called your NAICS code, NAICS. That's the North American Industry Classification System, and it classifies all types of businesses. So when you choose, okay, I want to be, I have an IT skill, so I want an IT company. Typically, IT, there's different areas within IT, but I'll just use one for like services. That's 541512, 541511. It's like a 6-digit code. So you need to know that, because when you form your corporation, that's what everything is going to follow. Okay, this is what this company's been formed for. Then once you form the corporation, then you need to get your EIN number from the IRS. Do you want to have employees or do you not want to have employees? So that's a decision that you need to make, because that's going to determine whether you get a TIN or an EIN. Okay, because an EIN is for employers. So, TIN is just your tax identification number. So there's a difference. So once you get those preliminary things figured out in your mind, then there are steps you go to, like you say, sam.gov. That's when you want to register your entity. And they talk about how you want to register your entity, all the things that you want to be able to say you can offer to the government. So if you can offer IT, well, maybe you want to also offer products. So you can do the services. Okay, I can not only provide you professional IT support and develop systems and answers and solutions for you, but also I can create a product. And then so there's a product code that you need to also identify. So whatever it is you think you can offer, there are so many. And once you choose those things and you go through that process, then they're going to go through this whole process where they're going to verify everything, make sure everything is legit, and eventually they're going to give you something called a cage code. And that is a code that will follow your business the rest of the entity's existence. The cage code is tied to everything from if you have to get a security clearance, like me, I have a secret security clearance. So with my clearance, my cage code is attached to that, because the government tracks everything using codes and systems. So you'll be issued this cage code. And every time you win a contract, your cage code is entered on there. So there's a system that can go back and tell you all the contracts that I've been awarded in almost 30 years, because I've had that same cage code number. So then now they have something called a UEI number. Instead of you using a Dun and Bradstreet number, because it used to be Dun and Bradstreet. Well, Dun and Bradstreet lost their contract. So people didn't know that Dun and Bradstreet, all those years you were being required to have a Dun and Bradstreet number. That was a contract.
Oh, wow.
So the new company that came in created
That's
the
opportunity
why
right
they
there.
said
for
Yeah,
that
so
company.
somebody
yeah,
came
they
in.
came in with a UEI code system, and they issue these random UEI codes now, and then so they're doing it through that process. So that contract went away, and then so Dun and Bradstreet, guess what they did? They pivoted and went in a different direction, because hey, they had been accustomed to a very large government contract. So they came up with some other things that they wanted to sell and do. So they're in some other arenas within the government. So you have to always be willing to keep your mind open, because you never know what's going to happen, but you need to be able to pivot. You have to be able to pivot. Just because something changes does not mean you should go away.
Right.
It causes you to no longer be able to flourish, to be able to function. So once you get identify the company, create the corporation, get your tax ID number, whichever one is EIN tax ID. Then when you go to SAM, you have those things because they're mandatory. Once you go through that whole process, SAM issues you the cage code and they issue you your UEI number. They'll say this entity is registered to do business with the federal government.
And it can be any kind of business.
Well, it has to fall within one of those cage codes.
Right.
So again, you can look it up as the North American Industry, North American Industry NAIC classification system.
Okay.
And so, for example, all you have to do is say, you can Google size. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about the size standard.
Okay.
Because that's important. So when you decide what you want to do, there's something called a size standard. That's another law. So the SBA regulates that. SBA is the Small Business Administration. When the SBA looks at that, so say when you choose IT, I'm going to keep going back to that one as my top of my head. IT, the next code is 541511 or 541512, whichever one we want to go with. They'll tell you the average that your company cannot earn in a 5-year period to still be considered small.
Okay.
Okay.
So if you earn the the size standard for 541511 or 12 is about $41.5 million. Okay, that's the size standard.
Anything under that is considered small.
It is considered small.
Okay.
So that's why I had to, make sure I wanted to talk about, I may have signed contracts that had billion-dollar ceilings on it, but that doesn't mean that you retain all that. You can do up to that amount of business, but a lot of times you're sharing it because the government they'll do what they call consolidate, or they'll bundle, because they're trying to not have to do so many little bitty itty bitty individual contracts.
Little bitty to them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Because when you talk to them
It's all
and they're
relative.
moving billions of dollars,
Right.
those are very small numbers to them.
Yeah,
They're very small.
And with the NAICS codes, one thing I wanted to mention, when people are looking at it and they're Googling it, double check it with the official website. But now we have AI. So you all actually can also put in there, like, what are all the NAICS codes that relate to public speaking or law or IT.
Correct.
And so that'll give you a good basis. And then we can go to the government websites and cross-check and make sure it's right. One thing you mentioned.
Hold 1 second before I forget this.
Yes.
Let me give you a gem.
Yeah.
When you're choosing that next code, the SBA is when they create your profile, they're going to say that's your primary next code. Okay. And so if you choose a next code, another one is staffing. I did that for a while. So 561110 is a staffing next code. That's for temporary personnel, right? That next code used to be about $7 million. So if that's your primary next code and you earn over $7 million within the 5-year window that they're going to audit to see whether or not you're still small or not, then
You
if
won't
your
be
company
eligible.
earns over $7 million, they'll consider you large.
Wow.
And you have to compete with all of the
There
other.
you go.
So you don't
So-
qualify for the small
No, you
business
don't.
set
So
So-
that's why that
Okay.
next code is important, which
The
you
next
decide
code
to
is very
choose.
important.
Okay.
That's why I'm telling you that, because when I first got into the game, nobody told me. So as I started understanding, I changed my next code.
And you can change it at any time.
Yes.
So let's say
Okay.
you're reaching that ceiling, you could say, like, all right, now my primary, and you'll just have secondaries, but your primary could be something else.
You can change it, but they're still going to look at your revenues.
okay.
Yeah, they're going to look at your revenues. So you can change it, but what I'm saying is when I first started out, no one told me the importance
Of
of
choosing
choosing
the
the
right
right
one.
next code.
Okay.
Because that gives you a longer window. See, these are the little nuggets, like when people go get in the 8A program and time they get a business, people say, oh, I should go get my 8A. And I tell people, no, you don't. Don't do that.
Tell us
That's-
what an 8A is again.
8A is another social economic set aside that the government gives where they'll set aside contracts up to $4 million without competition. It's called a sole source. You're the sole source to provide that service.
Okay.
So those, you can get those without competition, right? So
That's huge.
yes. So if you go and you get several of those in a row, and your next code, your primary was 561110, and you get about 3 or 4 of those $4 million ones, pretty soon you're going to be already at your ceiling. You see what I'm saying? Because they're gonna average your revenues over 5 years.
Do you recommend that people listening start out and we go directly for prime contracts, or
Oh, no.
do you recommend subcontracting, building your capacity?
And I'll tell you why. I used to think that people were just being selfish, and I thought that they were just trying to keep you down and whatever. But it is very hard to pierce that ceiling as a prime, and when you do, if you do not perform, there's something you can be debarred. There's punishments. There's something called a CPARS. Any contract over $1 million in value, the government has to do a CPARS, and that is a contractor performance assessment report. So that's when they're going to assess how you performed on the contract.
Okay.
So if your CPARS is not good, then and you have a history of not performing, when someone gets ready to issue new contracts, then they can look at your CPARs.
Oh, wow.
So your CPARs
That's
is your report
definitely
card.
something to
That's
take
your
into
report card.
That's
consideration.
your report card.
For
Right.
sure.
So
Because
if you don't
can't try to
understand
just get a contract
that's-
to get a contract
Yeah.
and get the
That's
money. You
what-
also have to do the work.
You have to
and make sure you perform well.
And
have
that
to
is
perform.
important.
Subcontracting lets you build a track record.
So what subcontracting does is it gives you the ability to learn under the umbrella of the prime, because the prime's report card is what's going to be reported, not the sub. See, the government doesn't
if
honor the sub.
So if she became a subcontractor to you,
Correct. They would if we didn't perform, and if Ashley was the reason my company didn't perform, they don't care that Ashley was the
Right,
sub, because
it's
they
on
issued
you.
the contract to me as the prime.
that's a good way.
I'll make sure I perform. Don't worry. Every time.
You talk about so much how mentors are so important, and
Yeah.
sponsors, and the
Yeah.
difference. Someone who'll actually step in it with you.
Yeah.
What's a good way for someone to find primes? If someone wants to
Right.
get into government contracts and they want to start out as a subcontractor.
Is there a database to see how
There is. There's a database that they use for primes to look for subs. Most of the time, it's challenging, but there are a lot of conferences that they do for government contracting, and you can go and meet, and they do what they call matchmaking sessions, where a lot of times it's like, okay, we're a prime company and we're looking for some new subs. We need some fresh subs to work with us, and they're always looking for new talent. So that's one way of getting your foot in the door. A lot of it I've learned is relationships.
Okay.
It's relationships. And even if it's not something that you really, really want to do long term, but it'll get your foot in the door, you'll get a chance to get an education, humble yourself and start there.
Right. So being physically present at some of these conferences and getting FaceTime and forming those
Yes.
relationships
Yes.
is going to be really
I've
important.
benefited from relationships from 20 years ago. It may have took us 10 years before we did some work together, but I kept that relationships positive.
Right.
And when the time, because the sales cycle can be long with government contracting. It can be a longer sales cycle.
And what is that sales cycle? So if they're starting today and they're doing all the things that we've discussed to them getting their first even subcontract, what timeline should people be expecting?
There's so many things that go on before that right there. You can't just jump to that. It's according to whether or not we're talking about what we're doing from the contractor side or what is going on the government side, because you got both sides at the table. So I don't know which one you want me to answer, because the government has their whole, what they call market research and all of those processes, and they do what they call, they'll issue an RFI or a sources sought. An RFI is a request for information, and then they may not know you exist. So as I talk with you, I'm going to tell you how to take your next code and look for opportunities to respond to a sources sought. So you need to respond to a request for information. If they put that out there, a lot of times they don't know you exist. And they're doing what they call market research. You're in the marketplace. And if we get the information from you, then we can consider you. And then we can even, once you provide your information and what you can do, they may say, hey, we really like that. You know what, when we put out the response or the solicitation, we want them to be able to have that capability too. So there's different things that you can learn how to use those to position you in a position for an award.
So they can kind of shape what their actual request for proposal will be
Yes.
based on what you put in your information.
ma'am.
Okay.
Michelle, can I ask you specific to what Ashley does? What type of, because some people might be listening and be like, okay, IT, but then there's so many other things that government contracts are looking for, other skills. So say for what Ashley does, right? What would be like an example of some type of government contracts that she could get?
She could get, when you talk about executive leadership training courses, there are contracts for that.
Okay.
Wherein, different agencies training. So basically, she's falling under the training umbrella.
Yeah.
And there are different agencies that have different levels of training and different types of training requirements. So we talked about like an SBA. I think we talked about you wanting to do a program with the SBA for entrepreneurs. And I said, well, I don't think I've heard of a specific program like that, but what I have heard of are other training opportunities that can get your foot in the door.
Yeah.
And then you have to segue over to there, but it gets you in the door. So if your training is on HR, if she's able to tell them, different rules, laws, regulations, or what they need to be in compliance with, and we want to come in and hold a training session for your HR department, and then they give her, and it could be a small award. And then once you get those awards, I can't emphasize enough performance.
Okay.
You don't have the option to fail. You don't have that option.
What would be considered a small award?
To me?
Or
No,
in
to
general,
us.
like-
So, yeah, so like if someone's starting out,
Suppose someone's
so
in-
I'll give you this, Michelle. So when we do our trainings, they start at $25,000 for private companies.
Okay.
If we were to go in the government, how does pricing work? Because we do value-based pricing when we sell to corporate. For the government, is it always hourly, or how does the pricing structure need to differ?
I can't tell you specifically because I don't do what you do, but I have partners that do. It could be hourly. It could be what's called a firm fixed price, where you can tell the government, okay, you need this training. Whether I make money or I lose money, your price is going to be $5,000.
And you
see.
pitch to them the price?
You can tell them that.
Right.
Because what they've done is they've done their market research.
Yeah.
And they know what other people who do what you do, they know what they're charging.
Yeah.
So you can price yourself right out of an opportunity. So it's very important for you to do the research to know what your competitors are charging, so that when you give them a price, your price is not, if your price is too low, they're going to throw you out.
Right.
If your price is too high, they're going to throw you out. They want your price to be right in that, they call it a competitive range. So your pricing always needs to be in a competitive range, or else you will not be eligible for award. So if $25,000 is an average, they have what they call the government credit card. That's a micro purchase. So they can issue those contracts to you all day long on a micro purchase. That's how I started out. I was taking Visa and credit card payments from my court reporting clients when I would go do depositions, when I would go do hearings.
And you still went through the bid process and the proposal process, even for the micro purchases?
Sometimes they need at least 3 people. They need at least 3 quotes.
Okay.
And then sometimes in the case of an emergency, they don't. Okay. There's so
And there's
many
always
things.
something going on.
Yeah,
So,
Yeah.
in case of an emergency. So it all depends. But again, the key for you is researching to understand what other competitors do I have in the marketplace, and then what are they charging. And then if you can understand their what they're charging, and then you can make that make sense based upon how much you're going to need in order for you to be profitable. Because the federal government is not in the business of driving small businesses out of business. Now they don't want to overpay.
Right.
But they want your price to be fair,
Right.
and reasonable. And then there's something called the lowest price technically acceptable. That's when the government has gotten into a lot of trouble. When they take the lowest price technically acceptable, they most of the time.
What does
they
that
can't-
mean, technically acceptable?
When you prepare your proposal, your proposal has to be technically acceptable. You have to meet all of the compliance standards in the solicitation document that they gave you. So if you do and you answer it in accordance to what they're looking for, you're technically acceptable. If you're not, if you miss something, if you leave something out, you will be disqualified as being not technically acceptable. But when you go to the lowest price technically acceptable, a lot of times they get garbage.
This sounds really intimidating.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's like
When
it's a
someone's
proposal
listening,
process.
I guess for me, it's not because I'm very competitive.
Right.
You gotta think about your athleticism and the things, whatever. Anything competitive, that's all it is. It's a mind game.
But is there a database where we can see like sample proposals so that you
No.
get an idea? Okay.
Well, what you can do is you can follow.
You could do that on AI.
Right. Yes, you can follow
ChatGPT
Michelle
can
on
do it, yeah.
Instagram, which is at Michelle Fegans Anthony, and you can hashtag Ask Michelle. We're starting this question and answer. But suppose I'm out here listening, and I have a beauty company. I sell hair care products, and I'm listening to the two of you, and I'm like, gosh, is Ashley lucky that she has somebody to walk her through this process. Where you're talking about how important it is to follow the letter of the law, how important all these things are. Where can I learn this stuff without getting myself into trouble?
Because you both do have a background in
law.
In law.
Well, you need someone to teach you. You do. You need someone that has already blazed that trail. And when I was in the military, that was one of the things that they would say. What do you want to do? In a situation, if you have a potential situation that could be harmful, you want to follow someone who got through that trail already.
100%.
You don't want to create your own. So at the end of the day, it's a willingness to give of yourself. It's not going to be easy. It's not. But what it is life changing.
Right.
And to me, I was always reared to believe anything worth having, I had to work for it.
Yeah.
So for this, I worked for it, and now I've reaped the fruit of my labor.
Right, and it's second nature more to you now
It
because
is.
you know what the process is
It's like a joke.
It's like once you learn the process and you know how to do it and you know the right way to go about it, it becomes easier and easier every time.
It does.
It's kind of like the first time buying a house and having to get a mortgage and you're like, oh, this is so difficult.
Yeah.
But then you do it again and then you do it again and you understand the process and how it works and the time that it takes and what you should be bidding and the people you should be working with, and then it becomes easier for you.
And think about the time people spend hustling, entrepreneurs really hustling, putting that time and energy into getting a government contract for your business. It's worth it.
It is.
It can be life-changing.
Because when you take the time to learn and not try to take all the shortcuts, you know what I'm saying? You want to take some that are reasonable, but at the end of the day, if this is something you're looking to change your financial future and your status, if you make up in your mind that, you know what, I'm going to put my mind to this and I'm going to do this, it becomes easy.
Right.
I remember about 5 or 6 years ago, I had stepped away. I've started the company over twice. And because the first time I started over, it was when I left Virginia to move to Atlanta with my daughters. And I was like, okay, well, I think I'm supposed to go into ministry or something, so I'm just going to do that. And I terminated the corporation. And then, like 2 months later, that's when I heard in my spirit, oh, no, I'm gonna bless you with government contracts. I never even thought about it like that. And then within between 30 and 60 days, I had my first $1.8 million contract. I was like,
that was life-changing.
It was life-changing.
Yeah.
But it was something that I had been doing all this time. I never knew that the government bought it at that level.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And so then after I did that one, my dad became ill with cancer. And so I was if you Google Daddy's Girl, you're going to see me. And so I took care of my dad from the day we found out to the day God took him home. And then like 6 months later, my sister was diagnosed with breast cancer. I jumped in a fight right behind that with my sister until God took her home. So I stepped away from the company. But then in 2019, I said, you know what? Okay, I'm going to do this thing one last time. And when I do this thing, and I let all my employees go, I went down to 0 employees. I did. And I came back in 2019 and I said, okay, I'm going to do this one more time. And when I just told myself, regardless of what you see, whatever you hear, this is it. And when I made my mind, when we make our minds up, I'm not kidding you, it has been nonstop. And it's just the truth. If you make your mind up, because I knew the potential that it had.
Right. Government contracts aren't going anywhere.
They're not. Yeah. And when you look at them, if you understand it, it's some people that have been in place for decades. And they're not going anywhere because the government contracts have created dynasties for people. They've created dynasties.
Now, when you say because you've talked about a variety of verticals that you've been in, do you recommend for everyone listening and also for us, like if we were to do government contracts, would you recommend starting a separate entity to do it or do it under the entity you already have? Is there ever a reason why you'd recommend starting a separate entity?
It could be a reason that you would start a second entity, but because this entity has to pass performance, you need to use that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And there's a difference between past performance and past experience.
Explain that.
Government sees that differently. So past experience means Ashley is an attorney. And if you bid on a proposal, instead of saying that I can show you that I did a contract for attorney services for the government. I can show you my past experience that I used in my civilian realm, that I was an attorney. That's your experience. That counts, as well as past performance means I have contracts that I've done that work and I perform, and you can find my CPARs.
Only government contracts, or will corporate contracts work as well?
They will take corporate contracts.
And they just want to see your experience.
They want to see it.
Now, if I don't have the experience, could I pull that experience from a team member that I hire, or how does that work?
It's according to the way they write the solicitation. Sometimes they do.
Okay.
And then you have to remember now, the government is ran by people.
Yeah.
And people are not perfect. So you have a lot of issues that go on behind the scenes with government contracting too. So, but you can't allow all of those other things to deter you. I look at it like this. It's just like a gumbo. All of that's part of the ingredients in that gumbo. But the outcome is this gumbo is going to be delicious. It's going to be good. It's going to be what I want. And as long as I keep my mind there, then I manifest the outcome that I'm looking for. But if I get caught up in what's in the middle of the gumbo, that's not right, then you don't get the outcome. So at the end of the day, it's okay that there are things in the middle that you don't like, because at the end of the day, all I'm thinking about is what my outcome. And as I think of my outcome, it becomes my reality.
All right. And listen, Ashley, I love that we got to sit here and eavesdrop on this conversation. And I just want to ask, Michelle, if people are dealing with you after this and coming to you for mentorship, will you be able to help with we're getting a general idea, but I know Ashley's going to need help when it's time for her to start actually putting her bid in and doing things like that and figuring out that process. Are you able to help with that process too? Is that something that you're going to do, or?
I will help to a degree. I'm only able to do so much.
Right.
But I have a team and I have other people.
Right.
That it's because of them I'm successful. So like right now, my team is doing everything that I need them to do. They're working on bids. They're doing those things. They're doing the pricing. And I just want to take this time to just give them a shout out.
Yes.
Because I have Melvin, I have Nikki, I have Sheila, I have Rita is, they all have nicknames. I won't tell you their nicknames, but they all have nicknames. I have Kiara, my daughter Kiara. I have Roy. I have Mike. I have Sean and Dwelle. So I have this team. And then we have partners as well that we partner with, because you're not going to always have everything that you need in-house.
Yeah.
And you have to be okay with sharing a piece of the pie, because some money is better than no money.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? So
and less stress is always better too.
Yeah,
some more money and less stress.
Yeah, so sometimes we choose which one is going to prime. Okay, this time, you know what? I'm not going to prime. You prime. I'll be your sub. You know, and so, but all of those things, you're right. They're going to require additional training. So what we want to do is create some training modules and sessions that people can go back to and they can listen to, and then I'll give them time to ask me questions.
Right.
The team is figuring out, okay, which day of the month do you want to just allow 30-minute segments for this group of people that just ask you questions, then your next group of people, because different people are at different stages.
Right.
So what I'm talking to you about, someone else may be a little bit more advanced or less advanced. So we want to break all of that down and see what I can do to help them understand how to look at their proposals, what to look for, how to understand what the government wrote. See, that's the other piece.
Yeah.
Understanding what is the government really saying here, and don't read too much in it and don't read not enough into it.
Yeah.
So those are nuances that we're going to be able to help people to do.
Good.
Yeah.
And
And
it's
we're
on
gonna
y'all
help-
to do the work,
yes.
for real though.
We're
Everybody
gonna-
is on you to do the actual work. though.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
listen,
Disclaimer.
I can only lead the horse to water,
Yeah.
and I am not over there slaving, doing all that slavery work. No, if you want to reap the benefit, you can do the work.
Right.
We'll just
You
teach
might as
you
well
how
do
to
it
do it
yourself
right.
then.
Yeah, we'll teach you how to. Because again, if I work with people, I want to be able to position them with a partner that's going to give them a contract.
Yes.
But so we're trying to think through how we want to do this, because you need to perform in the class. If you're the top performer, I've been thinking about things like that. If they're the top performer, I need to have a partner that's already on deck and willing to be a mentor and say, okay, out of this class, the top performer, then this company is going to take you under their wing, and they're going to make sure that you get your first subcontract. They're going to, I don't want people to come and listen to me and they walk away and they just spent their money and they didn't
Right.
get anything.
Yeah.
That's a failure to me.
That's the difference between a sponsor sponsor and a mentor.
Yes,
yeah.
it is.
Yeah, I don't, I'm not here for that.
And you do have to be careful
Yeah.
about who you do that for. But that is the biggest difference between a sponsor and a mentor.
A sponsorship.
Yeah.
I've watched her, Glinda Goodwich. I mean, she
Yeah.
totally takes a stake in everyone, and that's why we're honored to help you build this. And you can hashtag Ask Michelle. You can send questions to Wealth Wednesdays. You can send, follow her on Instagram at Michelle Fegans Anthony. And one thing I want you both to touch on, people hear this and they see a million people out there who say, I can help you learn about government contracts. Beware of bad actors.
Yes. If they tell you, you asked me about beauty. Okay. The government does purchase and give contracts in the beauty realm. It's okay. One of the instances is for like cancer patients. Okay, say the Veterans Administration, they have to take care of veterans. So if a veteran gets cancer, the VA will buy wigs. They buy wigs, But for someone saying that they'll pay for your manicure, your pedicure, please don't give them your money.
Right.
Please, I beg you, don't do that. You got to use some reason and common sense. Yeah, the government buys pretty much everything, but they're not paying for your beauty needs. They're not doing that. And they're not paying for their staff's beauty needs. They're not doing that, because that's a waste of our taxpayer dollars, when you start, doing things of that nature. But like I said, if there's a medical need or something like that, yes, they do. They will provide that. When you look at medical products, like if people are in the hospital, there's a huge volume of business for medical products and supplies. Everything from Band-Aids, masks, gloves, you name it, medical products. But a lot of times, because they can't do a trillion little small onesie-twosie contracts, they bundle them
all together.
And so once you get in the right relationship with people who can move it in volume, then, and that means you got to have character. You have to have character. You have to have integrity. And as you do that, improve yourself, people will give you the chance. They just will.
And beware of the bad actors saying they can help you with government contracts.
Yeah. If it sounds like it's just too
good
easy
to be true. Yeah.
When it comes down to government contracting, it is, because you're going to have to put in the work. But if you make up in your mind and you put in the work, I promise you will do well. You will exceed your own expectations, and $1 million in revenue will be something you laugh about. It just will.
I want to laugh about that.
I want to laugh right now.
We want to laugh about that.
It will be, because I heard something once that only 3% of women earn $1 million in their business. And that was sad to me. It was sad to me because we work so hard.
Right.
And, we drive so much. We're the engine. And the other thing I'll say about small businesses, the difference is we really do drive our government and we drive our economy, because the larger businesses can take their money and they can invest it offshore. They don't care about whether or not the U.S. has whatever they need. But it's small businesses, when we get that chance, we go above and beyond. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because we look, we know I got this chance. You heard me say you can't not perform.
Right.
But large businesses, they fail to perform all the time.
Yep. They
And
can
it's a
afford it,
difference.
though. They can
But
afford
when
that.
you build that reputation that you're that go-to, you want to become their go-to. Whenever they have a problem in their mind, you want them to think about you. That's what you want to become, but you can't do that off of somebody else's reputation, off of somebody else's sweat equity. You have to get your own, and when you do, it will pay you over and over and over.
Amazing. And Ashley, I can't have you leave without telling us about Black Women Sell Live, just so people who are listening get to know about that.
Absolutely. So, what Michelle said is true. 3% of women-owned businesses make $1 million. We don't know the stats exactly for Black women-owned businesses, but I know that it's less than 3%, right? And so what we're doing at Black Women Sell Live, very simply, is we are helping Black women learn to sell. In the private contracting space, we teach direct outreach. So we've landed contracts with AbbVie Pharmaceuticals, Blue Cross Blue Shield, major corporations by reaching out directly, going directly in their LinkedIn inboxes, going directly through emails, and building relationships that way, and having a sales conversation, having a sales call, and then closing the deal. You don't need a large Instagram following. You don't have to be an influencer for it. You don't need startup capital. You need a laptop. You need the ability to have sales conversations, tell people how they can do business with you, what you're going to give to them, and then close the sale. But I found that sometimes, women particularly will be like, well, I don't want to put myself out there. I don't want to say too much. And so Black Women Sell Live is an assembling of Black women experts, and we're teaching direct sales principles, right messaging, right audience, right fit. We've worked with thousands of women entrepreneurs to do this, and it's something that I'm very passionate about because before I was a lawyer, I actually did cold calling. So I've done over 20,000 cold calls. I was rejected over 90 times a day. And what I found is that once I got to that 90th rejection, I would get so happy because I was like, this means that
Something's
just
coming.
off of the law of numbers, like I am going to close a deal now. Like I've gotten my rejections in. So the best thing that ever happened to me was I learned how to properly handle rejection and no's. Because once you're not scared of no, you can always go after any opportunity. So at Black Women Sell Live, we're really teaching women, one, to learn who you are for real. Not who your business said you were, not who your auntie and your mama said you were, if that wasn't an appropriate classification of you, but you got to know who you are. Once you know who you are, you can go after any opportunity, even if it means you may get rejected. And your rejections go down, the better you are at explaining what you do. So we're going to teach you right audience, right fit, and how to sell and close the deal. And that's what we're doing in October in Atlanta, Georgia at Black Women Sell Live.
And how can people find out about it?
They can go to blackwomensellavent.com. And the theme this year, you guys, is Black Women, the world's strongest superheroes. So,
It is.
I like that.
it's definitely giving
I like
superheroes.
that.
Yeah, because everyone tells us, take your cape off. You don't need to be Superwoman. But if you put a cape in your hand, a cape isn't heavy. It's your thoughts that are heavy. Use that cape to lift you up. Use your superpowers. Don't let your thoughts overwhelm you. Get a clear head so you can dominate in business, and it won't cost you everything else you love.
You two are perfect. Our whole goal this month is to get people to stop thinking small.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Thank you both.
Thank
You're
you. Thank you for
welcome.
having
What
me.
a great Wealth Wednesday. Thank you, guys. I
Yes.
can't wait to hear about this next $100 million that you're
Yes.
going to
You got to come back.
help
Yeah, we have to
us.
see how her advice helped. You have to come back.
For sure. I will. Thank you, Michelle. I want to, thank you and give you honor for being a trailblazer and being a woman who I can look to and just see that it's possible. Your decorum, your grace, the peace that you carry with you, it means a lot. As a representative thing, and even the nuggets you gave us before this, incredible. So thank you guys so much for having us and bringing us on. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
you.
What a great
Happy
Wealth
Wealth
Wednesday.
Yes.